cut off in the last flip video. So let's wrap up here this discussion of Charlemagne. So as I was saying, Charlemagne and Pope Leo III have this mutually beneficial relationship. The Pope wants to be just as powerful as the Byzantine Pope. He wants to be just as powerful as the leader of the bishops, the Pope, in the Byzantine Empire. Moreover, he also wants to help spread Christianity, but he actually needs political force. He needs troops. He needs a government to help him do so. Charlemagne, on the other hand, fervently wants to spread Christianity, but also wants the religious validation to do so, which he could get from the Pope. And additionally, Charlemagne too wants to compete in power with the Byzantine Emperor, and too wants to seem just as powerful as the Byzantine Emperor. So we've got this competition between the East and the West, and two men over here who, in the Western and what is now the Frankish Empire, Frankish kingdom, both competing for power and both seeking for that legitimacy. So, potentially a planned event, potentially spontaneous. Historians debate about this. Charlemagne claims that he had no idea this was going to happen, but nevertheless, on Christmas Day in the year 1800 CE, Charlemagne is crowned by the Pope. That's what the coronation means. Coronation is the crowning of. So we have a Pope, the religious leader, the head of the Catholic Church, is crowning, meaning symbolically giving authority and giving legitimacy to Charlemagne. And he's crowning him in a very interesting title of Holy Roman Emperor, which seems to make no sense because Charlemagne's not Roman and he didn't rule over an empire. So the concept of calling him a Holy Roman Empire seems odd. So, and moreover, if Charlemagne didn't know about this, and why is the Pope doing this to begin with? And this, of course, this event has been depicted in several different artistic renditions. So here we go. What's the significance of this event? Why is it so important and meaningful that the Pope has crowned Charlemagne? Well, here's why. First, and you can label each one of these on the left-hand side of your notes with a numeral and with the bolded term. First, the title itself. So calling Charlemagne the Holy Roman Emperor is an indication and is really a reflection of the fact that Charlemagne himself is fusing together these Greek, these Roman, and these Germanic traditions all together. And a lot of people call this moment in time the foundations of modern Europe because modern European society evolved from here and really grew out of many of these Greek and Roman and Germanic traditions altogether. So the title itself is sort of this recollection of the Holy Roman Empire and where this group came from and kind of just blending together these ideas of the historical past and the current state of this kingdom of the Franks. Two, this was a significant event because it stands in history as a time when the lines between the government and the state, the government and the church, or religion in this instance, are completely blurred. So what did the Pope get out of this? The Pope, the Charlemagne, in this act, is giving the Pope legitimacy because he's showing by accepting this crown that the Pope is a tremendous source of authority. And in turn, Charlemagne is also giving his allegiance to this Pope. He's saying this Pope, not that Pope over in the Byzantine Empire, but this Pope is the true Pope. He's almost validating that line of the scripture that says that the Bishop of Rome should be the true vicar of Christ on earth. He's saying, this is the Pope, and I'm going to support this Pope politically, and I'm going to give him troops in order to help spread Christianity and the Christian world. What did Charlemagne get? Charlemagne, the new title that Charlemagne is receiving of Holy Roman Emperor, makes Charlemagne seem just as politically powerful as the Byzantine Emperor, the one over there in the east that he's trying to compete with. For example, that's what EG stands for here. The Abbasids. So remember, we've now totally merged in our time. We've now met up. We've rejoined the Islamic Empire in our studies. The Abbasids, the Islamic Golden Age, the caliphs of the Abbasid Caliphate, actually recognized Charlemagne as the legitimate ruler here. So this title, basically, even though it was essentially invented by the Pope to give to Charlemagne, still symbolized and still gave Charlemagne political authority and legitimacy that he had not previously had. Third, what this whole event here, this coronation event does, is it centralizes the Christian power in Rome, not the Byzantine Empire. It's saying that this will be the head of the Catholic Church, this will be the head and the the seat of the Roman Catholic Church, which continues until this day. So here we are with Charlemagne. He is crowned this Holy Roman Emperor. What does that mean in practice? What is life like in the kingdom that he has created, which is the Carolingian world? Life in Carolingian world on the left. First, Charlemagne was responsible for a very large-scale intellectual revival. So through those same monasteries I was discussing earlier, he had thousands of Christian works and Bibles produced by hand, and a very interesting script, very unique, specific script that was used to do so. And these are often illustrated, so they're called illustrated manuscripts, an example of which you can see right there in the top right. Charlemagne built and funded schools at his palaces. So you can see that there's this brief revival of learning and intellectual interest and movements that Charlemagne is heading. But do note two things. One, that Charlemagne is the force behind this, not a widespread event. And two, or movement, I should say. And two, that this is primarily being done through those Christian monasteries. So those Christian monasteries are serving as this source of intellectual revival. Still life in Carolingian world. The culture of the world begins to change here in the Middle Ages under the Carolingian world, based upon the teachings of the church. So, for example, there's a really strong emphasis on monogamy, which means to be with just a single person. Polygamy is when you're with multiple people. Monogamy is a relationship with a single person for an extended period of time. And this idea of a nuclear family, this really has changed social dynamics in the Middle Ages, because prior to this, the extended family, your kin, played a much more significant role. Families would often live together in households for extended periods of time, and now there's a newfound emphasis on the nuclear family, modeled after that of Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, as being the key to sort of social organization. They began to make divorce very difficult, to limit sexual promiscuity during this time. Homosexuality is being increasingly frowned upon and persecuted. So really you're seeing some of the basic teachings of many Christian churches, and specifically the Catholic Church, is really the foundation of that is really being laid here in the Carolingian world. And specifically with that, they're using scriptural passages to really punish people who are using contraception at this time. All seen as things that the church is frowning upon. Bottom line here, though, is that we're seeing the church taking on an increasingly significant role in the cultural values and cultural practices of the people in Europe during the early Middle Ages. Remember, if you think back, that this is happening at the same time as the Islamic world, which is the Abbasids, who are deep in their studies of surgery and medicine and emergency rooms and hospitals. None of that is being used in Western Europe. They are in much, much, much worse living conditions and intellectual pursuits. So, example for health, not Heath, Louise. Health, bathing was infrequent. It happened, but it was infrequent, which of course leads to far more problems with health and diseases and whatnot. They still practice bloodletting, which is the same practice that the Inca used, but for a different purpose here. That was for sacrificial and religious sense. Bloodletting here would be to rid the body of diseases. But the monasteries were, again, that source of medicinal knowledge. It was through these monasteries where most of those practices were occurring. And they used herbs, for example, but these were very basic, very rudimentary systems of healthcare. End of the Carolingian Empire is, as it says here, disintegration, the coming apart of the Carolingian Empire. I'll put that on the left-hand side. Like I said already, the Carolingian Empire, we have great warriors, but not particularly, this is not necessarily going to be a long-standing and political organization. We faced tremendous invasions, as you can see. We got the invasions by the Vikings. There are all kinds of skirmishes with the Muslim world here across the Mediterranean. As I saw already, the Vikings were superb sailors, so the Vikings were able to really overpower the Frankish Empire, or Frankish Kingdom at this time. And when Charlemagne dies, so many of these intellectual pursuits, so many of these cultural changes immediately die with him, because he was really the funder of all of these pursuits, and it was his support that really made much of this happen. So we had that brief period at the beginning of the early Middle Ages of hope under Charlemagne, of sort of this revival of change. But ultimately, with Charlemagne's death, that is gone, and Europe is about to really enter this period known as the Middle Ages, and more specifically one that many people call the Dark Ages. Here are your analysis questions. Don't worry about number 5. that doesn't work, as I realized, because you don't have a hyperlink here. This is a video. So those are your four analysis questions, and I will see you in class.